Cape York, Queensland in Australia. A helicopter crew is searching for a British tourist lost in the outback for more than 2 days. They find a message scrawled in the sand, but they can't find him.
It's a very dangerous place. Everything from wild boars to crocodiles to spiders and insects that live within that bush.
63-year-old Jeff Keys from Kent is far from home. He's alone, barefoot, hungry and fearing for his life.
It's now dark and I was in effect just wandering around in the bush. So that brought it home to me that I was actually probably in a bit of trouble, to put it mildly.
Years ago, retired mechanic Jeff set off on a trip of a lifetime.
My home is Dartford in Kent. My home now is the road. I've rented my house out. My kids are growing up, all in their 20s or 30s, so I'm a wanderer now.
So far, he's driven all over Europe and visited Russia and Japan. Next, he decides to head down under.
I wanted to get up to the northernmost tip of Australia, which is at the very top of Cape York, and I was heading also for a road that's known as the Old Telegraph Line, or the Teletrack. It's one of Australia's iconic drives that people love to do.
He's heading for a campsite in a remote part of the Cape York Peninsula, a vast expanse of land that measures nearly 150,000 square kilometres, and where on average the nearest town is over an hour's drive away. It's a beautiful July day when Jeff arrives at his destination, along with friends he's made en route.
We got there fairly early in the morning and decided to camp for a couple of nights. The weather was really nice and warm, and I decided I wanted to go off and explore a bit.
Jeff wants to see the popular Elliot waterfalls, which are around 2 kilometres away, on Elliot Creek.
My plans were just to swim down to Elliot Creek and walk back, so I hadn't bothered to take any shoes with me because I was going to be in the water and the Teletrack itself is sandy, so it would have been just like walking back up a beach.
As his friends go off fishing, Jeff sets out on his adventure by swimming up Canal Creek, towards Elliot Creek and its nearby waterfalls. Well, that's the plan.
Having set off for the swim down Canal Creek, I was expecting to find the waterfalls, but didn't. Unfortunately, I didn't actually know what they looked like. I just expected to find them a couple of kilometres downstream. So I just kept swimming.
But for the falls, he should have turned right. He doesn't realise it now, but he's swimming downstream, away from the waterfall, and further down Elliot Creek.
That was about 4:30, I think, and eventually about 6 o'clock I was thinking to myself, well, haven't found these waterfalls yet, perhaps I should be getting back.
Jeff gets out of the creek and heads off in the direction he thinks leads back to the campsite.
The track wasn't where I thought it should be. So at about 8:30, it's now dark, and I was in effect just wandering around in the bush. I knew that I was lost.
Finally, at 2 a.m, 12 hours after he set off with no shoes, he gives up trying to find a route back to camp.
What the sensible thing to do was to rest up. So I just went up onto the bank, found myself somewhere to lie down and just rest.
The next morning, and Jeff has now been lost in the outback for 18 hours. His friends back at the campsite haven't heard him return, so begin to worry. After breakfast, they decide to call the emergency services. Brad Fote is the senior police constable on duty.
The only details we had were that it was a person by the name of Jeff, and he had a British accent.
Jeff's friends tell Brad he was heading to Elliot Falls, 2 kilometres downstream from the campsite. Brad puts together search teams, including helicopters, to help scour an area of 6 square kilometres.
I've divided that up into numerous helicopters, foot search zones for land assets, and 3 primary search areas for helicopters. And basically they fly back and forward with aerial spotters on board in order to try and look for them.
After a while, I heard helicopters out, and they were quite a way back behind me, so they were clearly searching where I'd last been. So that brought it home to me that I was actually probably in a bit of trouble, to put it mildly.
Later, Jeff spots a rescue helicopter, but they don't see him.
And I was just standing there yelling at it to come back. I was yelling, come back, come back.
Back to Queensland, Australia, where 63-year-old Jeff Keys has been lost in the outback for more than 20 hours after swimming the wrong way down a creek. He has no food and is barefoot. 3 rescue helicopters are out scouring the area searching for him, but so far there's been no sign. Jeff's still confident he'll find his own way out of the bush, but he's in tough territory.
It's a very dangerous place. Everything from wild boars to crocodiles to all sorts of spiders and insects that live within that bush.
In order to keep going, you have to tell yourself something. Otherwise, if I'd said to myself, oh no, there's going to be crocodiles around, well, what was I going to do?
This is Jeff's second day lost in the bush. As he continues to push on, swimming along the creek, desperately trying to find his way back to camp, he comes across a sandbank.
I had a bit of a light bulb moment. I thought, well, if I write some kind of message on there, if those helicopters do happen to come down this way. So I just wrote the word help on the sandbank, and then I wrote 2807 being the date that I was there, and then I just drew an arrow pointing downstream, which was the direction in which I was travelling.
It's now 6 p.m.
The thing in my mind was just keep going. All the time I'm keeping going, it's easy to suppress the lurking fear that's obviously it was in the back of my mind, you know, what would happen if I wasn't found or didn't find a way out of it.
Jeff swims on, but soon starts to tire. He's been drinking water from the creek, but he hasn't eaten for over 26 hours, and he's extremely weak. It's another sleepless night in the bush for Jeff. After 2 days of searching and still no sign of Jeff, the rescue team are losing hope of finding him alive. Michael Reed is the helicopter pilot. He's searching likely areas with coordinator Brad.
I said, how about we go to, he said, we can go back now. I said, well, there's another one just up there, we'll go have a look. So we flew down just a little bit further.
Suddenly, something catches Brad's eye.
I didn't see it, but he just goes, what's that on the sand? I said, I don't know, I didn't see anything. So he said, go back around. So I circled back around again, and sure enough, on this sandy bank is a big help sign.
It was amazing to see that.
With newfound optimism, Brad and Michael push on with their search. But after scouring the bush further downstream, there's still no sign of Jeff. But he can see them.
I was resting up on the bank. I saw this helicopter fly over. So I just leapt off the bank out into midstream, by which time the helicopter had gone out of sight. And I was just standing there yelling at it to come back. I was yelling, come back, come back.
But Brad and Michael still don't see him. They turn around and begin their journey back to base.
As I fly, I bank hard right. And then as I come back around left to give him the left-hand bend, I see a flash of white. At this point, I turn to Brad and I go, I think I've just seen him. And he goes, what, where? And I said, straight down there, I'm not sure, I'm going to back around.
I was just waving like this, waving my hat and, you know, jumping up and down and hoping that would help them see me.
Sure enough, there's Jeff on the riverbanks going like this. All I could see, you know, he's a British national. I could see his white head and these white arms. So that was a pretty amazing feeling.
And this time I got a wave from someone in the helicopter window, and I just collapsed like that almost.
The fact that we had seen him waving indicated to us that he was at least alive. That feeling compares to nothing else. Nothing else. 3 days of hard work, looking for a needle in a haystack, and there it is.
at that moment they'd seen me, I knew that, you know, everything was going to be okay, or my ordeal was over.
Jeff has been found an extraordinary 15 kilometres from where he started out on his adventure. Michael lands the helicopter 600 metres away from him, and Brad heads towards his position.
Eventually I saw someone wading downstream towards me, and that turned out to be Brad Fote.
I said, Jeff, you got a lot of worried people at home, mate. So
I shook him by the hand and I said, I'm so glad to see you, mate.
After 47 hours in the bush with his bare feet cut to ribbons, Jeff is too weak to make his own way back to their helicopter. So Brad calls for assistance in the form of a winch chopper. This footage shows the winchman being lowered down to Jeff in the creek.
And Chris, the winchman, came down and clipped me to him. And he said, right, Jeff, just cuddle me. We're going up. So that's what I did, wrapped my arms around him, and up we went. And we were just winched up into the helicopter.
The rescue chopper's own camera shows a relieved Jeff clinging weakly to Chris just before they're pulled safely on board. His ordeal is finally over. Jeff spends the night in hospital and then rests up for a few days in a hotel so his feet can heal. He's then straight back on his bike to continue his adventure. But this close call has taught him a lesson or two.
It kind of brought home how much at risk I was and how disastrous it could have been. 9 months down the line, I still feel guilty about all the hassle I caused people. I'm conscious of how easy it is, especially in somewhere like Australia, to get yourself into trouble.